Thank you for joining us for another edition of Creatives Chat. Join us as we chat about who knows what.
Interesting.
Episode 32, featuring Jill Swan. Our show shall begin now.
Perfect.
Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by
wearehistorically.com, Conscious Human Apparel, and
Learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Creatives Chat. Hi, I'm Rusty.
I'm Peter.
And before we continue on with our show, we'd like to give a shout out to our sponsors, We Are Historically, for supporting our show this year. Thank you so much. Your work in our community has been stellar. And we'd like to introduce a new sponsor to our show, jazzpianopro.com. Peter and I are both taking lessons, and soon we'll be given progress reports as we go. And so if you'd like to join us, go to jazzpianopro.com and let's learn jazz piano together. Now, for our show, we have a really good friend of mine. So Peter, tell our viewers who we have on our show.
Ooh, Rusty, we have an amazing being. She's a powerful questioner, uses her acute observational skills to bring awareness to a person's thoughts and beliefs, which all help in terms of their transformation, growth, and healing. We have Miss Jill Swan, the Toe Reader.
Oh, everybody, you're going to love this. Peter, you're going to get your toes read, aren't you?
Oh yeah, it's going to be fun.
All right. Well, everybody, meet Jill Swan, the Toe Reader.
Oh, Jill, thank you so much for coming on Creatives Chat. How are you doing today?
I am doing awesome, and that was such a great introduction. Thanks, Peter.
Of course, of course. Well, let's get the readers, or I guess you could say, let's get the viewers what they're really asking for. So what is toe reading?
Let's get right to it, right?
Let's get into it.
Toe reading, in a nutshell, is the theory that our toes holographically record the path we've walked in life. Like, just our toes haven't always looked the same. And so it's the angles, the shapes, the bumps, and whatever else is going on with our toes is related to our stories and our thoughts. Because I guess in the sense, it's things that have happened in our life, but it's our thoughts that we attach to what has happened, good, bad, whatever. And so it's the thoughts literally show up in our toes.
What? So it's essentially it's our past can manifest itself into the present toe condition.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Even in that same sense, it's our thoughts about our past is what we're hauling around with us today. So even though it happened in our past, because we're still have maybe strong thoughts about it, or even thoughts that we don't even realize we're carrying, it will show up in your toes.
That's so fascinating. Well,
It is.
I'm just going to tease the listeners and viewers right now. I will be having my toes read later on in the show. So hold on tight. We still have plenty of questions to cover really quick, because how does one even get into or introduced to toe reading? Like, where did your journey start?
So my journey started back in 2016. I became a certified life coach. And it was interesting because it's a 6-month course that I took to become certified. And through the people that were in my class, and then later I knew people who took this class, and they said they never even heard anything about toe reading in the process of their course. So the teacher of my school was a certified toe reader, and he had, I believe now looking back, nonchalantly mentioned to the class, as a story he was sharing. And so it came up that he was a certified toe reader and he shared this story. And so I was like, what? I don't even know what it was, but like instantly I was like, I need to know more about this. So I approached him, asked what the heck, how do I, and ended up being gifted a toe reading by, so I was in Seattle at the time when I took this course, and then ended up being gifted a toe reading. So I had my first toe reading and was blown away. Thought, is this lady psychic? Like, what the heck? And the stuff she shared was like enlightening. Like it truly, I felt seen as opposed to how I show up in the world. I felt like, wow, she really sees me. And that felt like uncomfortable even a little bit. And so it was a seed that grew. I was like, I have to be able to do this. And so the school that actually certifies you in toe reading is in Arizona. It's in Tempe, Arizona, and it's called Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. And it is it's become a large school in that they teach life coach, they teach hypnotherapy, massage, Reiki, reading. It's just a ton of modalities that, they have like all kinds of courses you can take there. And the toe reading is like a one-off course. And so I signed up and became certified through their online course when I lived in Seattle. And one other person in my life coach class was also interested. So it was great because we got to partner up, and, because you need to have a partner when you take this, because you learn to read each other's toes. And I think the biggest thing, me and this other person were so excited about it that we were, looking at everyone's toes and so excited about our class starting. And when the class actually started, the very first thing we had to do was sign a waiver that we would not look at anyone's toes. I don't know if it was 10 or 15 seconds. It was some kind of short little time frame that we would not look at anyone's toes without permission, because it was so you didn't impose on their privacy. So like you couldn't be at the grocery store and see someone's toes. And I didn't want to sign it because I'd been looking at everybody's toes and was just fascinated by so I was like, do I have to sign this? Because I'm just like really into toes now. But I signed it. And even to this day, the really interesting thing about it is I do find myself looking at toes. I'll be getting a pedicure and the person next to me, and I'll see their toes, and it's probably for longer than but I do it in such a non-judgmental way. It's more of a interested to see someone's toes. And then if something maybe shows up in their toes where I feel like they've had a struggle or I send them energetic love. I just, I feel like, maybe even if they don't know, and I looked without their permission, it's kind of like, oh, let me even the odds. And so, yeah, I just kind of send them love on their course that they're walking in life.
I love everything about that. And I think the one thing that really stands out to me is that, because it's it is a healing, and I love how it is like a healing art, because when you're given insights into someone's life and they haven't said a single word, it is really vulnerable. It's like a weird position, and there's a lot of ways people can manipulate that and I know it's not like a psychic thing, but they could easily do that kind of, oh, well, you've had a pain in your life, and try to play you and manipulate you. So it's like, it means so much just to even hear you say like, I still do it, but I'm sending them love. Because I appreciate the honesty. And honestly, it's that compassionate work that just goes to show why you are a healer and how you developed into this path and this role. So I do have a question for you in regards to that though. When did you know that this was the healing mode for you? That toe reading was one of those ways you could really make an impact and put your special, unique, beautiful self in there.
To be honest, Peter, so it had its own little, like I was unaware. So before I learned about toe reading, my thoughts about feet and toes were that they were just gross. And I especially didn't like my feet. And never in a trillion years would I have thought I would have an interest in learning about what the toes have to say. I just, so when I learned about toe reading and had this crazy, I have to learn more. Throughout my life, I've had what I call nudges, things that make absolutely no sense and I don't understand it, but the nudge is like something that is loud, or it's just something that I can't ignore. And so I'm like, I just do it with no reason, no. So toe reading is probably one of those things that I just kept pursuing it, not knowing what was the point of it, or even that it was going to be a way to give back. It was just something where it was fascinating and different. And I suppose I'm drawn to things that are different. Like, palm reading is really cool, but everyone knows about palm reading. Toe reading just took it up a notch. And so I think that was it. It was just a way to, as I call it, fly my freak flag or be different. And I didn't really think of the service it was really going to provide as much as I thought of it, maybe a little bit of novelty, like it would be fun. Like what a great, but I really wasn't even giving the credit to what came up in my personal toe reading, that I think that was also a process to, doing our own work in life, being open to what my attachment to my stories in my past was creating in my current day. And my toe reading, it showed a light on an area in my life that was my early 20s that I had completely stuffed away. It was an experience that happened that had a lot of pain, a lot of regret, just all sorts of, but it happened, and I stuffed it away without dealing with it, without processing it or giving it the space it really deserved to learn the lesson from it. And when it came up in my toe reading again, it's not psychic. She didn't identify it, but she called out a time in my life that there was some deep, probably struggle or some, and I even later meditated on it because I wasn't even aware during the toe reading. It felt like something, and so when it came up in a meditation, and like, wow, I have some serious work to do around this, because when it came up, I felt all the ooey gooey messiness of that was like still, now I know, holding in my body in regards to it. So,
wow.
I think so the process of what came up for me, to answer your question, is that it became where once I learned how to read toes, I started going to psychic fairs and reading toes. And I had some people that actually cried, that had a true release in the sense of they felt seen and heard and validated. And I felt honored to be a part of the process. And so I think it's been this whole like, wow, what a great tool I have to be able to help people in a way that isn't the norm. So it's like a win-win. It's different and I'm helping people.
I love it. I love it. There's no greater satisfaction than turning our skills into that service for humanity. And I think that's something that just really warms my heart hearing so much. And it's funny because you had such a resistance to feet. I think that's probably the most particular thing that I'm like, I want to investigate, because the way I like to see things in life, a lot of the ways, is that our ego, whatever you want to view it as, the inner child, the conditioned self, the energy body, whatever. I like to see it as that antagonist that's always trying to kind of test us and push us in certain avenues of life to be like, all right, well, let's see if they're very serious in their heart. And it's in this way with you, I've seen that it kind of was almost hiding the fact that this was one of your skills, just due to like a natural, like, ew, it grosses me out. Like, well, what is it? Like, so what awakened within you when you had your toe reading that toes are actually fascinating, and that this almost like disgust or disdain for feet melted away?
For me, and I think there's an underlying, it's interesting because it comes out in toe readings. For me, it was truly a lack of, like, the self-talk was an unworthiness. Like, I'm not worthy, right? For whatever reason, just this where you're kind of, I was going through life having to earn, some kind of, whatever you want to call it, earn love, earn, prove myself to the world type of thing, whether consciously or unconsciously. And the dislike of my feet was a part of it. Like, it was another thing not to like about myself. And although I didn't really like anyone's feet. And so they were just like this weird thing, feet were weird is how I looked at it. But I really had a dislike of my feet. Like, my feet were another reason of, like, where I'm not up to par in some way. And so when I had a toe reading and realized that my toes actually represent, like, where I've been in life, and then felt seen by having my toes read, it just switched the view of them. Like, it felt like, wow, my toes, there's a, it was truly a little bit magical in the sense of how it flipped, how it, like, kind of put me from that, wow, I don't like these guys, to, wow, these are really kind of awe-inspiring what they're, and I think it's that, like, our feet carry us through the world. So in that, like, wow, really having some respect for my feet and where they've been and where they're continuing to show up and help me out is,
I love
it was a true inner shift is what it was.
Yeah, well, I guess this is the perfect segue for it. How do you use toe reading to help kind of evoke those inner shifts for people that you're working with?
So far I have given toe readings as a one-off service, as a toe reading. And one of the things that I have done now for a toe reading, because so much can come up in a reading for someone, and I actually have toe reading cards that you can get along with when you get certified at the school. At SWIHA is what Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. So they have toe reading cards, and they're these great, I have it here. I'll show you because they're so great. They have, if you could see, little pictures of baby feet on them.
Oh, I love it.
And then after a reading, I have people draw a card and they have questions on them. And whatever the question is, always comes back to whatever came up in the reading.
Wow.
Like this one here says, how will you step into your greatness today? So
like
that the person then has that to take away and meditate, journal on however they want. And then I also, as an extra step, so to speak, just wanted to give, because I felt like I personally like a takeaway. Whenever I have a great aha moment or something opens up, I like something to remember it by. So I have what I call my box of rocks that I have with me when I do a toe reading. And these rocks are rocks that have been collected out on, for, beaches, wherever. I clean them, and then they get written on. Usually a picture's on one side and a word's on the other. And I've had rock parties with my friends where we've gotten together and made rocks, and they've been blessed. And so the people then get to pick a rock afterwards to take with them, their takeaway.
I like that.
I do that because after the toe reading, I want them to be able to take whatever came up for them. And if nothing came up, that's great too, but they still get this takeaway. And the word that usually shows up on the rock, again, normally coincides what came up in the toe reading. Like the word could be peace or joy or fly, or and so it usually coincides with, and so that's been what I've done. Like, they get the toe reading, they get their takeaway rock, they get something to meditate on, their question, and off they go. And so I am currently creating a coaching program around getting a toe reading, and then whatever comes up in their toe reading is, like, let's say they pick peace, or the rock comes up and it coincides with that they definitely are working on creating more peace in their life. Then I can offer a program that says, here, would you like help creating more peace in your life, more joy in your life, more love in your life? And so for that same reason, it's like I felt like I'm sending my clients off with this toe reading, and then sometimes I feel like, oh, I could continue to help them. Like, I personally, when I have aha moments, I love accountability partners or someone that could coach me into, okay, I've been doing this as a knee jerk for this long. How do I shift? How do I reframe my story I've been hanging on to? So, yeah, that's a current thing that I'm creating, and it's going to be called So Much More, like with 3 O's, because it's so, and the point is, let me help you create so much more in your life, whatever that looks like for you. So it's your own authentic truth.
Yeah.
Because your toes are shining a light on the story. It's normally a negative story. It's just a story.
Ooh. But the power of the stories we tell ourselves.
Right. And the stories that show up in our toes are what we're telling ourselves.
Which is so, that's why I'm so curious to see what's going on with the toe reading later. Like, so in terms of this, reframing, the my story, how have you really experienced the life coaching develop into the spiritual process, or have you always kind of seen them hand in hand?
Definitely haven't always seen them hand in hand, because, well, for me, I believe everything is a divine appointment. And when I decided to become a life coach, it was a calling. It was, again, a nudge, I would call it, because I had no one in my circle, my family, that was, encouraging or thinking it was a great idea, or it just felt like this is the next step if I'm gonna. At the time, I didn't know, like, my life was fine, but it was fine. It was just, it didn't have any oomph. It didn't, and I knew, just, it was a knowing when I was going to go to this class, that what I'm wanting to learn to help others, I'm going to have to work through my own stuff before I could help others. I knew that going in. So there was resistance, because, I wanted to bypass that part. But so it's all been like part of my own story of where I've gone in attached to thinking my stories are my truth, because, I'm like, I had this experience and I have this opinion about it. So obviously it's my truth, because it's my opinion and I could tell you what happened to prove it. But in going through the life coach, I learned, like, it's a fascinating process, and it's not just a 1, 2, 3 process. It's truly stuff comes up and out, and that you get to identify and just learn a new way of being. I think is really a new way of seeing things, or a new perspective, or not even quite sure how to explain that one, Peter, because it's just been such a process that's kind of has blown me away in the process of it, to where there's something bigger than I went in with it in my head, thinking, here's what it looks like, here's what I need to do, and here's the end goal. And in learning, there's something so much bigger at work, that I'm supported divinely by this universe. And all I have to do is say yes, and, like, jump and the net appears, but it's like getting out of my own way to do it. So I think to answer your question, I'm still in the process of knowing it's a spiritual journey, because it so is for me. But in helping out, like, it's when I help others, I'm still learning about myself is what, I can still have a coaching session today that I'm like, oh, wow. And the voice in my head is like, can you hear yourself, Jill? Because that's a message for you too. And, so I'm just open to the journey and the adventure at this point. Because so much has unfolded already. That's kind of, I had no idea. One of those things was, I told you, SWIHA, Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, was located in Arizona. I am from the Pacific Northwest and born and raised. I'm an ocean seasons girl. I love the ocean and all the different seasons and the beauty of the green in the Pacific Northwest. And 3 years ago, I got a nudge, one of those nudges, to move to Arizona, the desert.
Wow.
And so it was in the process of doing the coaching, doing the toe readings, learning more about myself, and it made no sense to move to Arizona. I had no family or friends here. It's the desert. Like, there's no ocean, there's no seasons. It's just hot. And I actually ignored it for 6 months. For 6 months, it just was a constant, like, move to Arizona. There was no other way to explain it until I'm like, wow, I'm moving to Arizona. And I had no savings account, no job to support me in Arizona. I looked when I realized I'm really going to do this. And I continued to look for work in Arizona from Seattle. And what I call the nudge or the voice was like, just do it. Like, it was kind of stop trying to control it. And so I packed up my very little car with what would fit and drove to Arizona. And I thought, one of the reasons, I thought because I learned how to read toes by a school in Arizona, that everyone would know about toe reading in Arizona. I thought it was going to be a more known thing here. And still, nobody has heard of toe reading. Everybody is like, what is that? So I'm now in Arizona and don't even know why, but I just trusted the nudge.
Well, that takes such a courage, and I always like to, pay homage to all of those, beings spiritually unfolding, just to show that, to actually take those signs that the universe is, throwing in your lap, and to act on them, and to continue to carry out this search, regardless if you know the outcome or not. I think the biggest thing is when you journey into the unknown, you're rewarded with more answers of this great mystery. So it just goes to show, I call it your spiritual badass, when you just go out and do these types of things, because it just shows a deeper level of intuitional awareness that a lot of people are still learning to really tap into those powers, being able to listen to the voice and see what it's really trying to tell you or nudge you towards. All right, viewers and listeners, it's the time of the toe reading. So, Jill, let's get started. For those watching and tuning in, I sent Jill a picture of my feet. And now it's time for the toe reading experience. Take us away.
I love it. So for a normal toe reading experience, Peter, I usually ask the person if they have a way to ground or center or whatever to bring them into the present. And I do the same. I don't think, I feel like I feel like we're both doing a great job being in the present. I'm loving this conversation. And some people, the reason for doing that for a toe reading is because by asking them to, whatever works for them, even if it's just sitting, taking a couple breaths, feeling the chair underneath them type of thing, it's about kind of bringing them into their own awareness. So I don't want to be telling them about their toes. I kind of want them to be in their own, in their own body, in their own truth type of thing, and then sharing what's coming up, and then they can. So I do that with the toe reading, and then usually by the time someone's getting a reading, they know what it's about. And so I share that the feet, the cool thing about our feet is that if you like break a toe or all that means something. And so knowing what your different toes represent, it's like really cool. So I'll share that the right foot is how we show up in the world. And the left foot is our higher knowing, our spiritual side, our internal side. And so the first 4 toes, the big toe to the 4th toe over, all mean the same thing, except one's external and one's internal. And then our pinky toes are slightly different. And so the toes mean something, but there's also archetypes that can show up in your feet. And the archetypes, the reason I share that is because I saw more than one archetype in your feet. And what shows up for the archetypes is there's got to be a gap between the big toe and the second toe. So do you see how you have a gap between your big toes and your second toe?
Yeah.
So that gap also is a sign of someone who has a strong intuition. So, and from our conversation, exactly, right? And you'll see, like, some people will have a gap at the base of their toe, and then it'll be the big toe and the second toe will be like touching at the top. And that's a sign of someone who has intuition and they don't trust it. Like they block off letting it in. It's really interesting to see that. So you having that, and then the first archetype that showed up is called the King's archetype. And it shows up because there's the gap between the big toe and the second toe, and then the rest of the toes look kind of short and box-like, like it's I don't want to say stubby, but they're but they're still powerful. Like it's the King's archetype that shows up here, and a King's archetype is someone who would be a leader. Someone who also people are drawn to. So it's, and I feel that about you. I mean, I'm making the call here. You decide if it's true for you, but it's like the kind of archetype that would show up is someone who's just a natural born leader. And then with an archetype, there's shadow sides, so with the King, you could be a king that rules in the sense of you're there for your people and you're the good king, or you could be a tyrant king, that lets your ego rule. But
definitely had those phases.
Really?
Well, I feel like as teenager, that definitely was one of those things where it was I was very egoic based in my youth. And because a lot of that confidence and just like natural abilities, and have grown out of it, obviously, through my own spiritual search, but it became that kind of, the hero's journey, so to speak. I had to go through those depths to come back out and kind of recognize, wow, that was wrong. I shouldn't have done things like that.
But also really cool that you, even as a teenager, like, okay, is it like that's kind of supposed to be our rebellious learning years, right? To be like, oh, maybe that's a bad idea moving forward to have but that's really insightful that you learned it that early to kind of tone that side down.
To master it.
Yeah, find a better balance, a better side to your natural born leadership abilities type of thing.
That's interesting.
The interesting thing of you saying that is the other archetype that shows up, because you learned, you discovered that wasn't the best way to be, is the other one that's showing up is the Monk archetype, which is you still got the gap between the big toe and the second toe, and then it's the other 4 toes are close together, they're lined up, and then it's like with the other 4 toes, they're lined up doing their thing, but the big toe is this solid kind of dominant toe out there by itself type of deal, and that shows up as a Monk archetype by having the feet look like that. And the Monk is a lifelong learner. Like it's exactly like from our, and it's also like a monk is someone who may enjoy they're most likely an empath, and they're because of that, they like to get away from people. They like to, have their quiet, have their alone time. And the monk's shadow side is making sure they find a balance of how to be of service to people and to themselves, that they don't just check out permanently and become a hermit, but that they also, so it's, and it's cool seeing the different archetypes that come up in people's feet, because it usually does, pertain to personality traits. When I'm like, here's what this archetype looks like.
Yeah, I feel like this past 2 years, I've just been really getting out of my hermit phase. Because I definitely had to go to like a retreat, like figure some things out before you want to open up into the world. So like, yeah, these past few years, I feel like it's definitely been an unfoldment, but like a conscious like, oh, I've used that word specifically. Like, oh, I'm just being a hermit right now.
Right? I love it. That is so cool. So all the toes I said mean something. Our big toe is our destiny toe.
Interesting.
So on the right foot, it's how we show up in the world. And then on the left foot, it's how we show up and be in touch with our higher knowing. And I'll just tell you what all the toes. So then the toe next to our big toe is our communication toe, our communication and creativity toe. So your communication toe with the world on your right foot, your communication with yourself, your higher knowing on your left foot is the difference on when you're reading them. And then the third toe is our action toe. So action toe in the world, action toe internally. And then the fourth toe over on the right foot's my favorite toe, and that's our relationship toe with the world. So it's not just intimate relationships, but family, co-workers, the people, people we interact with. And then, so then the relationship toe on the left foot's with yourself, your higher knowing. And then our pinky toes, the one on the right foot is our abundance, our manifesting toe. And then the one on the left foot is our trust toe. So, and then when you read the toes, the way what you want is straight toes. Straight toes is that you're walking your path. And you really have some great looking feet, Peter. Like you really do. Like they're straight, like they're
it's too funny.
But I'll tell you the things that popped up for me when I looked at them. One of the things that popped up was your communication toe on your right foot. So the toe next to your big toe has like a bruised looking toenail.
Yeah, that was like drop the knife on it a little bit ago.
Right? And everything is something in toe reading.
Yeah.
So currently, does it hurt?
No.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is because here's what shows up when you have like a bruised toenail. And our toenails are our thoughts. So with each one of the toes I described, so it would be your thoughts. When we have toenail issues or a missing toenail, it all pertains to something. So the black spot, having a bruised toenail, it's like, and again, this is your communication toe, your creativity toe with the world, like what you're creating in the world, what you're putting out there communication wise. So a bruised toenail would be like blood coming to the surface, like new ideas, something is about to unfold, something new is presenting itself, right? That's exciting and cool. And because of what you do and who you are, I'm like, I can see that, like new ideas, like, cause you're just like, you are creating, like you're on Creatives Chat, like, and talk, right? Like, it's like perfect. Like this bruised toenail coincides with Creatives Chat. Like it's literally new ideas,
Yeah. That's so wild.
Right. And the reason I asked if there was pain behind it, because, we could have something and then it's like, yes, it's painful. The pain would suggest that there's a resistance to letting the new idea in. And you said, no, you didn't have any pain. So then it would be like, you're in the flow of like new ideas are coming and popping up and you're not resisting it because it probably hurt when you dropped the knife on the toe.
Oh yeah, very grateful though that it was the handle end down. That was one of those moments where I was like, whew,
right?
Whew, almost lost a toe there.
Right, exactly. And then again, that would have, correlated over into something. Like it's so easy to have people be like, well, I have that blister there because it was new shoes. You know, it's so easy to be like that's just because of my new shoes. In toe reading, everything's something. So the toe you get the blister on and where it's at or what it's doing, like that would represent that part of your life. So you would read a toe reading like, well, okay, I'm sure your new shoes caused the blister, but here's what it could be telling you about that area of your life, which is fascinating, I think.
Yeah. No, it coincides. More credibility to what you're saying is that these past few months, I think I had it almost like 2 months ago. And because it technically started at like the very beginning of the nail, so like further down, obviously it's gradually grown out, but like it's one of those things that there's been a lot of communication differences that I've changed within people in my life, and new ideas coming into fruition and different projects I've been working on.
Oh,
So like
that's
again, like
awesome.
I'm giving you the weight because it's like, yo, there's facts to this. That blew my mind. I had no idea about that.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, let's keep it rolling. I'm curious.
Well, I have to tell
Crazy.
you, okay, so why the relationship toe on the right foot's my favorite. Like it is
Yeah.
my all-time favorite toe to read because, so I say what we want is like straight toes, toes that are walking their path or in, alignment with their truth. And so your toe is fairly straight, but do you see how it kind of tilts at the tip towards your big toe?
Yeah.
So the big toe, if it's tilted towards the big toe, that's looking towards the past. And so, and the reason that I completely love this toe, every toe I've ever read except one, including my own, is tilts towards the past in some degree. Like, it could be majorly like hanging out in the past or just, and yours is slightly tilted towards the past the way I would read it in an intuitive way because it's like our relationship with the world. So it looks like a full toe, like it's full and fleshy, like it's a lot of love to give, a lot of, right?
Yeah.
And the little bit of tilt towards the past, it also looks like the toenail feels a little bit off-centered or something on it. Like it feels like the toenail's really more tilted towards the big toe than the actual toe. If I'm seeing the picture, it just feels a little, it could just be the angle of the toe tilted towards the big toe. Are you looking at your picture or your actual toe?
I'm looking at the feet now. I'm looking at my actual
I love it.
I would say it is, that could be a little bit more of the picture, but it definitely still has it has that kind of like
a little
curve.
bit, like
it does have that curve to it a little bit.
Right. And so here's what that represents in our lives and what is so true for me. And I found to be, it's like our human nature, or at least the Western culture that we look to the past in our relationships. And what we do, again, it's back to what we said earlier in the sense of we don't look to the past in all the great, like we could, but most people don't look to the past and use the past as this experience I had to prove that there's amazing things happening in my life. We have an experience in the past that wasn't pleasant in whatever way, shape, or form. And then especially in our relationship, though, is we use that as reason to guard up, to armor up, to, not put ourselves out there as much. And so when our relationship toe is looking towards the past, I find that it is a way to play safe, or a little bit a way to be like, usually it was from hurt or pain or whatever. And so I'm going to rein it in a little bit, or I'm not going to be as free flowing or as open-hearted or as, I'm going to like play it safe so as not to experience that pain that happened before. Like, and when the toe, and yours is like really doing a pretty good job at being straight. It's just a little bit tilted. So when I share this, like, it's like you're someone who may have done their work and may have be like owning this, but it's just that awareness of how we could take a past experience, bring it into today, and then have a less optimal experience today because we're purposely holding back. we're, you know, we're the one that's keeping it from being optimal because I don't want to get hurt or whatever. And I use it all the time because it's one of my favorites, is using the EKG machine as an example of someone had showed it being straight lined and asked what it was, and everyone said that's death when it's, and then he showed it, you know, with the up and down, and that was living. And they're like, yeah, that's alive. And so he said, when you're alive, the EKG machine has ups and it has downs, and it's nonstop, up, down, up, that's life. But when it's straight lined, that's death. But what we tend to do with our relationships from the past of how people interacted with us in the world, and we hold on to less fun feeling moments and use those as, make them a truth of like, oh, I got to be careful now. And so we try to make it to where we don't have any of the downs, you know. And I find our ability to feel pain equates to our ability to love. So like when we get really hurt, it's because we really felt love. And how exciting is that, you know? But when we straight line, like that's death, like that's a stagnant, you know, that's, and so it's when I coach people on that who really have it tilted towards the past, it's a choice. Like it's not making it right or wrong. Like maybe the pain you felt was so much in the past, like you do not ever want to feel that again, and you are good with a stagnant straight line life. Like you're like, that's enough for me, I'm happy. But it's okay. But if you're, you know, not aware and you want to have those ups again, you're going to have to be okay, maybe feeling some downs, and just be in the, you know, throw your hands in the air when it's really up and exciting and great, and then hang on tight when it's in the down, because it's going to keep changing. We constantly, life is ever changing. So that's why it's my favorite toe, because yeah, it's like so much fun to, so the pinky toe right there next on the right foot, right there next to your relationship toe. Oh yeah. I want to bring that one up because it's looking towards the past.
Yeah, I got a fleshy pinky toe as well.
Right. And this is your abundance prosperity toe. Right? So it's like got a ton like potential, it's got a ton of abundance, but it feels like one, it's kind of hiding under the relationship toe. It's kind of tucked into your relationship toe. And then also the toenail, like you could take a look better, Peter, and see, but from my picture, is the toenail like a little bit?
So I got that one from my mom. Like, no, we barely, like, very small pinky toenail.
Okay, well, my question for you, what are your thoughts around abundance and prosperity in your life showing up in your world physically?
I think for myself, I've always tried to have a path of moderation to a degree, but it's one of those things as well where it's funny because it's, I guess if getting put on the spot, usually I'm asking the questions. No, right? I would say it's actually probably me learning more to let go and be okay with receiving things, because I think that's very much a thing that I've been working on for myself spiritually for a little bit, is being okay accepting the grace that life's given. Because I used to let it go to my head and all these other things, and then I pretty much closed everything off after like pain and trauma, and I've learned to really try to open it up and heal from it, but just being okay with just receiving good things.
Right.
That's what you know what I mean? Because I feel like, especially as a kid, I was always like, oh, I'll get something really nice, and then be humbled and karma checked super hard by life. So I was always very like, do I want the new thing? Should I take it? But yeah, right? I don't know.
So there's a receipt. Yeah, I love that. So because your toe, it's just what you said. So yes, your mom could have the same toenail, but also if you get more comfortable around receiving, and also I get the impression that you're quite the giver. Like obviously you just, from our talk and everything, it's all, the more we receive, the more we can give, right? Like, yeah. So making receiving something that allows us to give on a bigger level, like the more I receive, the more I have. And when you make peace with that, you know, like, hey, if I open the floodgates to receiving, then I, can open the floodgates to giving.
You know what's really funny with that? Sorry, I just want to.
Yeah, no, I like what's coming up.
It relates, I think, back to my point of one of the things I was always really bad at, and I'm still learning my way around this one, is like receiving compliments, because for so long I had really, really low self-esteem. I was one of those cover-uppers. I was like, no, I'm this, this
Right?
brilliant, bold personality, but deep down hated myself. Like, so I laugh about it now, but like, it's one of those things where it's really funny that that's where it spoke to me when you said that. It was just like, oh, you need to be more accepting of things, like of help, of all that different types of things. Because there's been abundance of service and things like that in my life that I'm always like, no. I don't like owing people things. I don't like doing that stuff. But like, it really has these past few years been an opening up of just like acceptance, letting things in, receiving the grace, receiving the kindness and all that.
Yeah. And it's truly because, again, that was a knee-jerk to not be comfortable accepting and then becoming aware. And something as much as, someone saying, what a great shirt you have on, or, your hair looks great today. And instead of being like, oh, this old thing, or just saying thank you and truly letting that in is a practice. And it's like consciously receiving something as simple as a compliment really helps reset us. It's again back to that reframe of how do we change the way we're showing up in the world, just getting comfortable receiving and saying, that you had really low self-esteem. I believe we all have something that has a lack mindset behind it about how we're showing up in the world. Like, we have such a tendency, I know I do, of going out and you see someone else and you're like, oh, if only I had it together like they do. They have it so together. But that person has their own internal dialogue, because I think it's part of this human experience to figure out, to get past that. And I just wholeheartedly believe we all have something that we would like to improve on or work on or feel like is proof of why we're not good enough.
Yes.
And I really do. And so that's part of what I love to coach around, and why I love to read toes, is because of the whole, like, it's in your toes that you're worthy, that you're here to show up and do. Like, the big toe is, the metaphors for toe reading are great, because like how your big toe takes up space, it like is a big toe, your destiny toe. And like, that's how it translates over in toe reading. It takes up space. You're meant to take up space in this lifetime, is how it, you're meant to show up and own your gifts. And another thing that shows up on your big toe, another thing that I was wanting to point out with toe reading, is our toe is our age, is our lifespan. So the base of our toe is when we were born, and the top of our toe is today. So that's how, so with that being said, do you see you have a line on both your destiny toes, on both your big toes, like right down the middle? I think a little less than middle is what you see that indent. So what that would suggest is, so with it being, I think, are you willing to share how old you are, Peter?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just turned 30 in October.
Oh, you did? Happy birthday. You had a COVID birthday. So
right.
Right. And so I asked your age because with the base of your toe being your birth and the tip being basically a 30-year-old toe, then to me, it looks like it's showing up just under halfway, which would suggest like mid-teenage years, would be where this line was. And again, this line could suggest a time in your life back during that time frame where something so amazing and profound happened that it shaped your life, or most likely something in your life during that time was so traumatic or intense in a way that it, and what it could be, like
That's
at the
really
time,
good.
we may label it as really bad and terrible, but it's most likely something that made you readjust your way of thinking or
Mhm.
reevaluate your values and just maybe show up in a different way. And
You're nailing the
but-
head thus far.
right, and well, and because the other thing is, so you see how like the knuckles of your big toes, how your toes, how it's not completely straight.
Mhm.
Especially on the physical toe. I feel like the knuckle there, that would kind of be like that you've had to work to be on path, that you've had to it wasn't like you had this great supportive, like, hey, cheerleading squad rooting for you, keeping you on, but that you had to really do your own work, because it could have gone either way, right? It could have been like,
It's 100% right there. Oh my
I love
gosh,
that.
this is blowing my mind. I love
Isn't
it.
it amazing?
Yeah,
That's
I love
how,
love for this.
that's how I felt when I got my toe reading. I'm like, this is crazy that this is in my toes.
Hello, Jill. It's been a pleasure having you on our show. I'm so glad that you got to meet Peter. And Peter, yes, you got to learn to take a compliment. You are a phenomenal host, man. You really
Yes, you
directed.
are.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
I ditto that.
Yeah. And so it's a pleasure to be able to ride in the back seat on this journey. This is where I believe pressure, applied pressure, brings out the character in us. And so sometimes we put ourselves through self-imposed pressure. We create problems for ourselves. I think Peter even mentioned, like, all our problems are all self-created. They're just illusions that we create ourselves, and I think about that. Yeah, we create our own problems, and then we go out and solve them and then pat ourselves on the back for it. But if you also substitute problems for lessons, I think then we go, oh, I created my own lessons and I learned from them. I think that's where we've shifted, we transcend. We go from problem to lesson, and we start to look forward to them. Oh, it's not another problem, just another lesson. As time goes by, we just get used to it. Oh, yeah. Like you said, we climb to the mountaintop, and what do we see? Oh, more mountaintops. Okay. There's more mountaintops to conquer, right? But when you're climbing up that one mountain, it's a big deal. Like, I've never, especially if it's your first time climbing up a mountain, it's like, oh, this is, hard work. But you see other people do it, you get inspired, you make it to the mountaintop, and you realize, oh, I'm not done yet. Now I gotta get back down.
But what came up when you said that too was the picture, but we're learning as we climb that mountaintop, we're learning how to climb. And so our skills are getting stronger, and we're getting better able to navigate the mountain to where we're maybe even excited about the next mountain.
And next thing you know, we're training and showing other people how to navigate up the mountain. Yes. And it becomes no big deal. Just another mountain.
My life coach teacher called lessons, he called them blessings, because he said they were blessings and lessons. So he always would, when we coached in class, it was, what's the blessing behind that?
Oh,
I love that.
Right?
I am following that.
I know.
That's a great one.
That is a great one.
Well, I think it comes back down to, I really want to use Jill's line in the sense of holding the space. I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I had, in the sense of just the phrasing of it, is that, when we hold space for others, it gives them that authentic space to really see themselves for the first time, to recognize, to heal, to learn, whatever it is they're working on. But it also gives you the opportunity. And in truth, it is the holding of our own space that is self-growth and leads to self-mastery. So I like the way you put that. I just haven't seen it. I haven't approached the image from that angle yet. So that's what I like to see, is just like, oh, okay, I got you. I like that. We got to hold the space for ourselves.
Right?
We do. And I would extend that. And we have to hold the space for our community, I think that's where Peter's been showing up lately. You've been holding space for us. And Jill, I see where you're doing it for the community as well. You're getting out of your shell, you're holding space for yourself, which then allows you to show up and hold space for others.
Mhm. Right.
And it's the only way in truth.
And it's truly a dominoes effect. Like the only person we really have to worry about is ourselves. Like, how are we showing up in the world? And then there's that dominoes effect by us living our truth. It's truly giving other people permission to live their truth. It's
Yeah.
you're gonna get a little bit of the back, like, hey, that's not how we do it, or that's not, you're doing something different, but you just keep doing you, and eventually other people start doing them. It'll less of that, less of the matrix.
Truth. I like that.
Well, Jill, it's been a pleasure having you on Creatives Chat.
I have loved it.
You have a lot to offer the world. And, I got to see from a observer's point of view what it's like to witness somebody getting a toe reading. And so I would like to encourage others to go to toereader.com and sign up and find out for yourself what truths will be revealed and what questions Jill will read at the end. So I do, before we go, can you pull a card for Peter?
I'd love to, Peter.
Totally spaced. I love it. Bringing it back full circle.
Right, this is great. So I'm shuffling here to get them all mixed up.
Should I tell you when to stop?
How about
We'll do like
that?
an
You
old
want to
school
do
magic
that?
trip. Yeah, sure, why not?
Sometimes one flies out, whenever I do them for myself or other cards. I always like it when one just flies out. I'm like, that's the one.
I can't wait.
And let's go stop.
Okay.
And then we'll do the first card on top, right?
Okay.
Or I don't really care. Like whatever works.
Oh, I love your question. Here's your cute little toes on the front. And I'm going to show you can you see the question?
Are you
There we go.
Are you a people pleaser or a path walker? Ooh, I like that.
I do too. That's a great one.
And so we'll end on that, folks. Are you a people pleaser or a path walker?
That's so great.
Everybody, have a happy always.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
That concludes this episode of Creatives Chat. Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 3:33 p.m. Pacific Daily Time as creative minds get together and chat about who knows what. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible. Thank you, LoyaltyGutterServices.com and WeAreHistorically.com. Conscious Human Apparel.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thanks for joining us. Have a happy always.